I always believed in the mantra, I would rather you cry on my shoulder than me carry your casket. What I'm talking about here is being there for your fellow man, your best friend, sometimes your fallen soldier, right? But sometimes what happens if you're not careful, not only are you the shoulder to cry on, it's your energy that winds up in the casket. All right, so I'm going to tell you a cautionary tale. And in this video, you're going to learn, especially as an empath, someone like me and you who feels for other people and want to be there for other people, what to look out for in terms of red flags for people draining your energy and misusing your energy, and how to circumnavigate out of that situation so your energy is not the one that suffers. Okay, so to paint a quick picture, I have to start the story at the beginning of the day, right? It's a beautiful day like this one. I decide to go to the track. We're going to do interval sprints. I decide to go alone, but my buddy calls me. He asks me my plans. I say, hey, come with me. We're going to go sprinting, David Goggins style, right? So we go there. We do our sprints. You know, I'm pushing them. We're having a great time. And we do our sprints. End of the workout's done. And we're just out here enjoying the beautiful day, sitting on the park bench, just shooting the shit, man. Talking about life, wholesome conversation, talking about girls, talking about trips for the future, right? All these positive things, and just taking in sunlight after exercise, feet on the ground, like we're feeling freaking good, right? And on a side note, I had been fasting up until that point. It was about 2 p.m., but it goes to show that when you're having good conversation, when you're around good energy, you're like the plants, you're like the flowers, taking in energy through photosynthesis. That's how we strive, off light energy, off heat energy. And I believe that's replicated with a good conversation and good company and sunlight, right? So after that, I'm feeling amazing. I don't need to eat till 5 p.m. The vibes are at an all-time high, all right? But then my other best friend, he texts me. He says, hey, like, I need to talk to you about something. And of course, you know, anytime you get that text as a friend, you should always not be alarmed, but you should be concerned in a sense, right? Sometimes people need that real conversation, they need that real connection, because as I was alluding to before, sometimes they need that shoulder to cry on, so they don't take it to the extreme. And especially these days when everyone likes to just talk to Chat GPT or just bottle things up, right? The healthy outlet sometimes is being that friend or having that friend to talk to. So we go out, it's late at night, we just go to like the local ice cream place, and we're talking. And of course I go there with the intentions of taking in information, but there's a difference between being a ear to listen and then being a sponge to trauma dump on. And that's exactly what happened to me, right? So for the next 2 hours, I proceed to hear about this narrative of the big man versus the little man, the white man versus the black man, or insert color, whatever it might be. Me and him are of the same color, right? That's why we grew up together. We became best friends, is because we grew up in an environment where it was predominantly white. But us two being one of the only few minorities in the school, that's how we kind of drew similarity and clicked. But what happened was I never let that narrative shape my life, whereas unfortunately he did. Every opportunity he saw to cling on to that excuse of race, of big guy versus little guy, the system versus the individual, right? Always looking for not necessarily to escape hard work, but to finesse the system. This is sometimes the ideology that we fall into sometimes if we're brought up with the wrong ethics, right? And then it's one thing to be trauma dumped on, but it's the second you want to share your own opinion or your own thought or maybe your own story, that person will sometimes cut you off and then just go right back to their trauma dumping. All right, that's a big sign that whatever friend you might be dealing with is actually just using your energy and usurping it and siphoning it rather than it being exchanged through a healthy flow. There's a huge difference, right? And I was reminded in that conversation of why I've kind of distanced myself, which is another strategy, right? Slowly distancing yourself, setting down boundaries. Like, hey, I could have, in retrospect, I should have said, hey, I have 30 minutes to talk, or I have an hour to talk. Instead, it turned into a 2-hour trauma dump session, right? The other thing you can do is, if you find yourself in this situation, if it's recurring and if it's serious, you know, you could be that ear to listen to. But on the other hand, you could just say, hey, that sounds like a serious issue. you thought about talking to anyone, like alluding to a therapist, right? Because that is not your job as a friend. Sometimes you do need to be that shoulder to cry on, but if it's repetitive, if it's a pattern, that's when that energy starts draining you, right? Because I'm gonna tell you something, dude. After that session, all the energy I was feeling from the sunlight, the sprints, 6 months of nofap now, just good conversation with my friend, like all this hard work, all these good intentions and good energies were single-handedly destroyed by a single conversation, right? And luckily I've been wise enough to kind of, again, distance myself, but some of you guys are in situations where that is literally your best friend. You see them every day at school, you see them every day at work, right? And that can be a difficult energy to be around. So things you could do to reclaim your energy, right? Because after that conversation, I came home, I needed to cleanse myself. So one of the best things you can do is read, right? Whether that's fiction or nonfiction, just get your mind on something else to consume anything else other than the conversation you were just having, the one that drained you, right? These are teachings from people who have been through a lot of things, who teach on a lot of subjects and could feed you information that'll push the other stuff out. Another thing on the other side of that is journaling, right? You could even just journal about the conversation just to bring that awareness from clutter inside your head to words on a page. That is massive for your energy and your mental clarity, all right? And even just journaling about something else to keep your mind off the conversation you had. And lastly, this is going to sound a little silly, but I promise you it works, right? Is taking a shower, okay? There's a saying, right? Cleanliness is next to godliness. There's something about the act of washing yourself, not just of the physical dirt, but the emotional grime that sometimes people leave on you. And a shower is honestly one of the best ways to relieve yourself of that, all right? Just be really careful about who you surround yourself with. There's a reason that Robert Greene in the Laws of Power ruled, law number 10 is to avoid the unlucky and the unhappy, right? Now, I'm not saying if you ever have to talk to somebody, you can't be that guy, because especially as empaths, we're very aware of not trauma dumping on people. But I remember going through a rough patch once, and my best friend I was doing the sprints with, I told him, hey, I need to talk. And we went out, we had a coffee, we had a cigar, we smoked on it, we talked, and he allowed me to vent, right? Whereas the other friend would always just like interrupt with jokes or comments. It's not healthy. So the end takeaway from this is a real friendship, real brotherhood goes both ways, right? It's a medium through which things flow. It's not a grave through which energy is buried. I hope this helped. I'll talk to you soon.